Is the Leica Q3 one of the best street photography fixed lens cameras that you can get? And I think the answer is going to be yes. Now, this is going to be my personal opinion. You may have your preferred system, but my review or feedback is going to be based on some of the other cameras that I thankfully own, such as the Sony RX1RII, the Ricoh GRIII and Ricoh GR3X, and of course the Fuji X100VI, which I own since that camera was ever released. Recently sold it to get the Mark VI, and why I continue to gravitate towards the Leica Q3. So let's talk about all the characteristics, but there is going to be one main one that makes this camera the king of its category. So one of the topics that we have to talk about is going to be the sharpness of the Summilux 28 f1.7. This lens is extremely sharp. Now, it is not the fact that you actually need sharp images in street photography, right? Pretty much most of my favorite images are either capture in motion blur or slightly out of focus. But when you take in consideration the 28mm focal length, the sharpness and micro contrast, meaning micro contrast detail inside the detail, and the full frame sensor at 60 megapixel, it makes the system so versatile, because when it comes to street photography, not always you're gonna be able to posture yourself in the right position and frame everything according. You know, sometimes something has happened in a split of a second, you aim the camera and you take the shot. And it is nice to know that I can actually go in post and recompose to an equivalent of 50 or even 75 millimeters and not be penalized and look that the image has been cropped aggressively. Something that I feel that with some of these other cameras that I mentioned before, it is something that once you push it a little bit too much, not only you start losing a lot of resolution, but you start seeing the artifacts or zooming in too much. Another feature that is going to make this camera or lens excel among all the other systems that I mentioned before is the particular design of this lens. This lens has been designed like a true Leica manual lens. Now take a look at this lens. For example, we do have a proper hyperfocal distance scales right here, so zone focusing is as easy as it is with my Leica or Voigtlander lenses. This is something that it is very particular of this camera, and you won't find it in any of the other systems that I mentioned before. And we also have a focusing tab that also operates very similar to a modern Leica lens. This tab right here, when it's locked, is going to engage in the autofocus mode, meaning that the camera is going to autofocus for you. But then when you release it, you are going to be able to engage in manual focusing mode. And one thing that I have to notice is that this is one of the few cameras that you're gonna have with a pseudo manual focus that has a 45-degree rotation, pretty much like a Summilux 50mm, for example. You know, it is something that you won't find in any of the autofocus cameras these days, because the autofocus ring, you know, spins forever. So you never know exactly where you are in your, focus scale. Now, when it comes to the rangefinder style or EVF, this camera is gonna have the best of all the other systems. First of all, it has great resolution, great refresh rate, and I think the size is actually really nice and really comfortable in the eye. Now, the Sony has that hidden one that you have to actuate. The Ricohs don't have an EVF, and the one on the Fuji, it's okay, but in my opinion, has no comparison when it comes to the one of the Leica Q3. And as I continue to share some of the images captured with this camera, let's actually clear out one of the late to the party features, and it's gonna be the screen. When it comes to Leica, we have it for the first time, but I think the Leica has made the most sturdier and best implemented way. It is also the screen with the better resolution out of all the cameras, in my opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, everything looks really nice on the screen. Now, another tip that I wanna give you for street photography is the way I set up my screen. I set up my screen in black and white, so that way I can get a better understanding of tonal values. You know, it helps me better during the day to actually gauge the exposure, and even at night. It also gives me a representation of what that image is going to look already when I convert it in black and white in post. Now, when it comes to Leica, Leica has master user interaction, and I think that when you fall in love with a camera, the way it performs and the way you interact with the camera, that is the camera that you are most likely to shoot with. Now, battery life is going to be another reason why this one is going to be better than all these options. The Sony RX1RII has that tiny little battery life. The Ricoh, the same thing. Those, batteries don't give me a lot of shots, to be honest with you. I always have to carry more batteries with me. Not a big deal, but if I don't have to change the battery and I can continue focusing on my shoot without being afraid that my battery is going to drain on me, that is actually a plus. And in my opinion, a great street photography camera has to be a great low light performer. And I love capturing street photography at night, more specifically when it's raining or the floor is wet, as you can see on some of these images right here. So the way I shoot with the camera at night is gonna be the complete opposite than during the day. I like to go full out of focus for several reasons. Number one, I'm gonna wanna keep my shutter speed pretty high, and that's gonna be anywhere around the 250, if I can 500 ideally. And my aperture is going to be close, or if not, at f1.7. So because of that, I know that I can simply aim the camera in my eye and scrub the screen or use the D-pad to move my focusing point around and just nail the shot. So when it comes to choosing a system with the best low light performance, I think the Leica Q3 is gonna be the one with a fast Cinema-Lux at f1.7. Now, would I recommend the Leica Q3 as the best street photography camera? And to be honest with you, that is something that you are gonna have to decide for yourself. Now, what I can tell you is my feedback. For me, it is the perfect street photography camera because it is a camera that has one of the best 28mm lenses ever created, and that is a bold statement that I can actually testify after trying so many lenses. It is a camera that has tons of dynamic range and that micro contrast that allows you to punch in. So yes, 20 is wide, but I know that I can always crop to an equivalent of 50, again minus the depth of field and the compression. But it is a camera that does what I wanted to do really well, and it does it every single time. Another thing that I like about this camera is that after some of the firmwares, some of the glitches that we had at the beginning, they seem to be completely gone. But if you're looking for the perfect hybrid shooting camera, this one is not gonna be the camera. Perhaps, there are gonna be cheaper options and some other cameras that are gonna have more power. Perhaps, we'll recommend a Sony a7C Mark II. So again, it's gonna be where you see the value and what you wanna do with your money. I owned the Q2 before, and to me, this camera was a no-brainer and did not disappoint. So guys, this one is gonna be the end of the video. Leave your comments down below, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Take care.